Your political fix, Cameron Holmstrom, is back from Bluesky Strategy Group. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning, Rob.
How are you?
Tired. Very tired.
Yeah. little underslept, are you?
Just a little.
Yeah, I've been there.
When I went to bed, I really couldn't settle.
I don't think you're alone. Zoe Knowles is back. Sussex Strategy Group. Good morning.
Good morning.
In the same boat?
In the same boat.
Yeah. We're all well caffeinated now, though, I suspect. Yes.
Not enough sleep, too much caffeine. It's definitely the story of this morning.
One of the things that I love about Election Day in the United States is how all the networks, they come up with their own music. I don't know what symphony orchestras they enlist to make this music. Which one are we going to listen to first here, David? Okay. Just bear with me. Who is this? CBS News. Okay. Look, listen how grand this is. That's beautiful. We got to play the Fox News one. It sounds like halftime of the Super Bowl, the Fox. It's crazy. Yeah, I love that stuff. All right, that's good, David. What do you think of it so far, Cameron? How do you think this is it going the way you thought it was? It's 238 to 213 right now. What do you think?
Well, honestly, I feel a little better. Felt a little better here in the last hour than I did going to bed last night.
Okay.
Mostly because my big concern wasn't so much if Biden would win or not. It was going to be the margin. If the margin wasn't going to be strong enough to kind of give it its own ability to stand on its own two feet, and frankly, what would President Trump do? And when before I went to bed last night, and Trump was coming out to make his statement of whatever, all the things that he had to say, that was all too expected. And I guess that's my worry. It's not so much what the numbers are going to say right now, or even where they'll be at the end of the day. It's what are the people going to accept, and what are Trump's people going to do? Like that, I guess that to me is the big worry. I'm glad to see that, they're ahead now in Michigan, they're ahead now in Wisconsin. Arizona seems to be relatively safe. There's still more coming in Georgia and Pennsylvania. Like you can see the numbers are there. With Trump out there doing what he's doing, and the fact that, let's just face it, he gained more vote this time. He grew his vote too, and that means there's a lot of people who buy what he has to say, and how far they're willing to follow him. And I guess we're about to find out.
Okay. What do you think about where the race is right now, Zoe? 9:35 the day after. What do you think?
Well, at this point, we're looking at some of the traditional bellwether states and trying to, look into the election crystal ball to predict what the next likely 24 hours or probably even more is going to look like. We've seen Biden able to, get some significant victories in urban and suburban ridings. So take, for example, Atlanta and Phoenix, in Georgia and Arizona. But then we've also seen Trump do exceptionally well in the rural ridings. And he's also been able to do quite well with a lot of the Hispanic and especially Cuban-American voters. So when we're talking about, what are the bellwethers to look at, it's how can we better understand ridings, but counties, thinking a bit too much about Canadian politics right now.
That's okay. Yeah.
So when we're thinking about how can we predict what's going to happen, what's important is to look at key states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So if we expect, if Trump wins North Carolina and Georgia, which it's looking like he's going to, and then if Biden takes his win in Arizona and then wins Nevada, which he is also expected to do, then we need to focus on those three northern states. And if either Trump or Biden wins two of those three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, then the election is over. Unfortunately, these states are very slow to count their mail-in ballots. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin both were not allowed to start counting their early votes until Election Day. So everything is a lot slower, and unfortunately, these delays have just created a lot of uncertainty and a lot of opportunity for Trump to come in and declare a victory. without all the votes having been counted.
Okay. It's not going to be hanging chads in Florida this time. And, sometimes I guess there is a method to the madness. The Trump campaign was repeatedly warning about the radical left, socialism. Be afraid. Biden is a front for the radical left and socialism. And in Florida, based on what I'm hearing on from some of the experts in the American media, it registers. It registers with Cuban Americans. It registers with Venezuelan Americans. It registers with people who have fled communism. And, Trump wins Florida by 4 points, 3.5 points. What do you think about that, Cam? There's a method to the madness, my friend.
No, there absolutely is. And you know what? I guess maybe for me the most disappointing thing about this whole last 24 hours is, as someone who's run more than a fair share of his campaigns, I like to think the best of electors and other parties and my opponents and, how they go about things. Because and if you beat me straight up on an argument, you beat me straight up on the facts, I can respect that, tip my hat to you, and off we go to the next day. But I have a real hard time stomaching it when I see candidates running on pure, flat-out lies. Like, there's no other way to put it. It's a lie. If Joe Biden is a closet socialist or somehow a puppet of the radical left, then I'm sorry, then I'm Miss Universe, okay? Like, there's no way that's true. Because, seriously, if you can convince people that Joe Biden is that, then you can convince anybody of anything. And then we're in a very dangerous spot. And that forces the other side of the ledger to make a choice. Do you keep fighting a clean fight, knowing that you might lose it, or do you get down in the mud with everyone else? And I'm not saying the other side's perfect by any stretch. What I'm just saying is that I have a real problem with the idea that most of what Trump's messaging has been over the last few months has been a flat-out lie with little grains of truth sprinkled through. And I guess my problem is that people believe it. And so now where does it go from here? I guess that's the greater damage.
Well, here's what I want to get at. I mean, I think this is the big question. It's what I'm going to ask my listeners during our open line hour is, given everything that's happened in the last 4 years, given everything that's happened this year with the pandemic and the response and the death toll and everything else, everything that's alleged to have happened, why is it even close? Let me ask you, let's start with Zoe on this one. Zoe Knowles, Sussex Strategy, why is it even close? Why isn't, if Donald Trump is so bad, evil incarnate, okay, why is it even close? Why is he even competitive, Zoe? What do you think?
So I think the key to understanding Trump's success is watching those Trump rallies. And you really can't get a feel for just how effective and I'll give him credit just how talented he is at those rallies by watching a 30-second soundbite. If you can stomach it to sit and watch an entire rally, you will see how he, I would say, hypnotizes the entire audience there. He is a fantastic storyteller, and he has been able to sell this story, as you had mentioned, especially around the Democrats being, socialists, and if the Democrats win, then America is going to become the next Venezuela. He's been very effective at selling specific stories to specific voter segments. Now, the story around socialism in America, he's been very effective at selling that to Cuban Americans and Venezuelan Americans. And that's why he's been able to do so well in counties like Miami-Dade and Florida. He's been very effective at, convincing large swaths of Americans that Antifa is, a domestic terrorist organization. And I would say the sad truth is that a lot of Trump voters will just accept that verbatim, because for so long they felt that the mainstream media, outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post have not been speaking to them and have not been hearing their opinions. And Trump has been reflecting what those voters want to see. They've been reflecting a lot of that anger. And so, when we compare to 2008, when Obama was running on a campaign of hope. Trump has been campaigning on a message of revenge. Let's take back what is ours.
Very good.
And that's why he's been able to do so well. And, this year is the highest turnout in 120 years.
Yeah.
The highest turnout in 120 years. The highest turnout since American women were granted the right to vote. And this normally bodes well for the challenger to have such a high turnout. But this year we've seen millions of new voters come out to vote for Trump. So it shows that his method of storytelling is working because he's playing to people who feel like they have been left behind by the system, by their government, by the politicians, and by the media. And that has created such a powerful us versus them mentality.
Okay. Us versus them. Okay. Cam, why is it even close? Okay. If Trump is the horror show of the last 4 years, why is this race even competitive?
Well, see, I'll agree with Zoe on this when it comes to Trump's abilities. But what I would say is that the underpinnings that allowed Trump to do this have been building for the longest time. When you do see, we talk about a fracture of media in the States and a breakdown of trust between institutions. A lot of that's been underway for the longest time. And when I look at it personally in my own life, my mother grew up on the Ontario-Minnesota border. And I've got family on the other side. And one of my great uncles who married into the family, he's a Vietnam vet, retired Customs border agent, very articulate, very smart, educated guy. And for about 10 years, he had fallen deep down the rabbit hole of Fox, conspiracy theories, of this and that. He sent me stuff all the time by email. And at first, it shook me because I'm like, how did you, of all people, fall into this, right? And we had a moment a couple of years ago when my grandfather passed away, and we had a celebration of life with the family. He came up, and he was staying at my parents' place where they don't have Fox News. It's not on their satellite package. And he was watching CNN, and he just said, quipped one night, wow, it's like I'm watching things from a totally different universe here. And it's true. When you do look at the coverage of what's happening, and you see what people are taking in, they are being exposed to two different universes. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's what it is. And when you inject someone like Trump into that, who knows how to manipulate, who knows how to press those buttons, and has no compunction about how he does it or no morals about how he does it, that's a very dangerous thing. It's one thing to push buttons to try to advance a political goal or do things in a benign way. But when you have no boundaries about ethical or otherwise in what you do, that opens up some very dark places. And I think that's why, people trust him. And they distrust the other side more than they trust him. And I think it's just as much as anything else. And he didn't create that, but he's been able to exploit the heck out of it.
All right. So when we come back, the polls were way off 4 years ago. It doesn't look like they're much better. Okay. Quite frankly, 4 years later, is there something fundamentally flawed with public opinion research when it comes to politics in the United States? I want your take on that. And of course, what's in it for us? Okay. We all want to know what's on the line for Canada today. It's the day after the U.S. presidential election, but nothing is settled yet. Cam Holmstrom, Zoe Knowles, your political fix. Be right back on the Rob Snow Show, Rogers TV and 1310 News.
The world is changing, so keep up with Rob. The Rob Snow Show returns on 1310 News and Rogers TV.
I love this with CNN. First of all, they got breaking news is like on the screen, all the breaking news. And all night I was watching CNN. Oh, by the way, we should play the special CNN music, David. Do you have the special CNN music? Come on. They made the new music just for the election. This is CNN. Okay. Key race alert. That they were doing that all last week. With key race. This is one of the key races. Yeah, they were doing. We're back. It's your political fix. The Rob Snow Show, Rogers TV and 1310 News. Cam Holmstrom is here from Bluesky. Zoe Knowles is here from Sussex Strategy Group. Anybody watch CNN last night? Were you guys watching CNN? Zoe, did you watch CNN last night? Sure.
I watched CNN. I was also flipping back and forth between the different channels
flipping around,
to see
right?
how everyone was covering it. Yeah. funnily enough, Fox News had Tom Brokaw.
Oh, Fox News had Tom Brokaw last night.
They had
Okay.
Tom Brokaw, which I found a little surprising. He kept trying to make comparisons between 2020 and 2000. Understandably, it seems as if what happened in Florida in 2000 is happening in multiple states this year. But I think that when you're looking at the different ways that CNN or Fox News or CBC are covering the election, everybody seemed to really be on edge, except for Fox News, funnily enough. They were one of the first times I've ever seen this on Fox News. They were very patient and they were very cautious, and it seemed as if they had, received a memo saying, hey, don't go too all out tonight. You could actually start some civil unrest if you start making some predictions too early.
What I find amazing, he never disappoints. John King is amazing. How he stands there in front of that screen and goes through all of those. He doesn't just go through the states. I mean, he goes through the counties and the small towns and the suburbs. It's his depth of knowledge is incredible. To watch him, No,
it's encyclopedic actually, and that's who I was watching all last night. And I have to admit, I obviously there's only so many times you can watch them, hit the magic wall and add up how all the scenarios or how they get to 270. Although I have to admit, it did frustrate me when they kept jumping over Rhode Island and Hawaii into the mix. We're just a couple votes shy. Where could they be? I'm like, Providence, Honolulu. Please, don't forget about these places.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
Now, nevertheless, I don't think it's a good night for the pollsters by the looks of things. I don't think any of them had it really this close. What do you think, Zoe? Is there something wrong with polling in the United States? We seem to be better at it here in Canada at polling our electorate. I don't think they're very good in the U.S. when it comes to these elections. What do you think is going on there?
Yes, I would say there's definitely something wrong with the way that polls are conducted, particularly in the States. But, I would also say in Canada to some extent. Polls are traditionally conducted in pretty, I would say, archaic ways. They're relying on people to have landlines. When most people receive a phone call at 7 p.m. at night, they either let it go to voicemail or you think it's a scammer and you hang up as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And anyone who's worked on a campaign cannot count the number of times when we've called up someone who is listed as being, 100% conservative or 100% liberal or 100% NDP voter, but who has moved or changed their minds or even passed away. And the information that a lot of pollsters have is just fundamentally flawed because it's based on inaccurate data. The other problem is that polls involve another bias because polls overrepresent people with more time and who are far more politically engaged, people who are a lot more passionate, which is not the majority of voters, unfortunately. And the fact that polling hasn't really changed since the post-war era there hasn't been a real incentive to update polling because any poll, even bad polls, generate clicks. So even though we all know that polls can be inaccurate or misrepresentative, there's little incentive to improve the system because the status quo is generating lots and lots of clicks on those polls. People are checking in on every poll to compare them to, and dozens of hours of media coverage spent analyzing these different polls and interviewing the pollsters. So at the end of the day, yes, there is something very wrong with it, but without a clear incentive, I don't see how the status quo will improve.
Okay. What do you think, Cam? Is that your experience? You've done a lot of campaigns. You call people and, no, this was John Smith's number, but John's not with us anymore.
Well, you know what? That is a general problem, I think, for polling and for campaigns in general. It's that the ways you would typically get a hold of people are changing. The fact that most people don't have landlines. Like, I don't have a landline anymore, and I haven't had one for 5 years. My wife and I each have our own cell phones. So even if you wanted to try to call both of us, you're not going to be able to do it, right? So these methods of contact have changed, which has hurt polling and allows people to filter out more. But honestly, when I look what happened last night, I'm putting down the results from last night more to the phenomenon of advanced voting and the specifics of the pandemic than just messing up in polling. Because I think once all the votes are cast, we're going to see that the polls are going to be relatively close within the margin of error. I don't think they're going to be that far off. It just looks that much worse now because we have so much vote that's being waited to be counted that wasn't being factored into the process. So I wouldn't take this as the example, but I do agree. In general, the industry does have some issues, but I think those are issues that anyone who's trying to make contact with people are running into now. How do you reach people in the most effective ways, getting people where they're at while still getting a representative sample of the population? It's gotten that much harder.
All right. Okay. We only have about 2 minutes left, so we'll have to be quick. Why does this matter for Canadians, this election, Zoe? Why is this important?
I would say that a Biden presidency would be a chance for America to renew their close friendship or allyship with Canada. Donald Trump is the first president in decades who has not made a state visit to Canada, and that is a very important statement. But a Biden presidency can strengthen U.S.-Canada relations, strengthen our trade channels, and even support our position in our foreign relations, especially with China. But, a Trump presidency could also, just looking on the bright side here, have some silver linings for Canada, especially in terms of investment opportunities, especially in the high-tech sector and climate change technologies, renewable technologies, that rely on highly skilled immigration, who, don't see a very stable country in America to immigrate to. And
a Silicon Valley brain drain. A Silicon Valley brain drain. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
To Canada. Okay. Okay, very quickly, Cam. Only have about a minute left here.
Okay. Well, to me, I think the big difference here, and why this matters, it comes down to tone. I think policy-wise, for a lot of things, it's not going to directly affect us, but really it's the view of the world. Donald, we are the biggest trading partner of the U.S. and supposed to be one of their best allies. Yet the Trump administration has never treated us that way. They've treated us as a competitor and an enemy, as same as anybody else, and that's not been served by us. Whereas someone like Biden, I think, really understands the value of alliances, and understands the value of those partnerships. So while we'll still have disagreements with the Biden administration, I believe that the nature of the relationship will be different. The fact is, I don't think with the Biden administration, we don't need to worry about the U.S. pulling out of NATO, or trying to run the WTO into the ground. Yes, we'll have our issues, we'll work them out.
Right.
But the point is that the general relationship will be stronger, and that won't leave us wondering where we're left in the world. When, let's face it,
we got to go.
So much of our anchor.
The band is playing. Thank you so much to both of you.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. Cam Holmstrom from Bluesky. Zoe Knowles from Sussex Strategy Group. We're watching the numbers as they're counting the votes the day after the U.S. election. Oh, I want your thoughts on this. I do during our talkback hour. Phone lines are open right now, folks. I'd love to hear from you. Why is it even close? That's my big question for you. If Trump is so bad, why is it even close? At 750-1310 after the news on the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and 1310 News.